Welcome to this strategy-rich edition of The One Thing podcast, hosted by Ron Sheets. On each episode, Ron introduces you to the amazingly successful entrepreneurs from his Rolodex who reveal the simple truths behind the one marketing strategy they rely on to produce extraordinary results. Each episode is guaranteed to expose you to a proven approach for producing high-value and highly profitable business. Welcome to this episode of The One Thing podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Ron Sheets, and this is another edition of the One Thing Business Podcast. I have with me today Justin Miller, who is founder and owner of Profit 911, which I'm going to let him explain more because they do a lot of things. But Justin and I have known one another for a long time around the Kennedy world. So you're going to hear from a smart direct response marketer today about a very specific subject that I have talked about in the past, that I subscribe to the philosophy of, and we'll get to that in a moment. So first of all, Justin, thanks for joining us. And why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'll give you the real one instead of the smart ass one. So,
well, that's maybe out of character if you didn't give us the smart ass one.
Yeah, so Profit 911, or as by the time people hear this, probably will be known as Jurassic Marketing. We are a direct mail marketing agency. So every year we mail millions of pieces of assorted varieties of direct mail for primarily professional service providers. So not your typical print mail shop, if there is such a thing. This is an audience often ignored by the industry because, well, small piece counts. You know, we could mail an election mailer and mail millions of them. Yeah. Or mail for a local doc and mail 500, and we chose the smaller. But what we really do is we help those small business owners get more referrals, more loyalty, more repeat business, all the things that aren't like really sexy in the marketing world. Yeah. You know, everyone wants new clients, new patients, and they want it the easy way. And we give them the more traditional, better chance of actually getting results way, if you will.
Yeah.
I guess as a brief backstory, so the agency used to be a digital marketing agency, which kind of shocks some people that now we're direct mail when we were digital. And there's a couple reasons for it. There's internal and external reasons. You know, externally, it's because we were getting better results with the pieces of direct mail we were implementing. So we were doing, you know, complex follow-up systems, and we had direct mail as a little piece of it. And that piece was often outperforming the email component or the retargeting component. So externally, it was getting wins for our clients, which obviously is the goal. Internally, it will prove to be a better service for us to provide, since there's, you know, higher barriers to entry. You know, a legitimate building sitting next to me here with 10,000 square feet of equipment, and it scaled a lot faster. So as we've scaled, we've kind of pruned down the types of direct mail, even, which we'll talk about here in a minute, to what's working best. And once we did that, it's been better for everyone.
Yeah. As I told you, you got a smart marketer here, because he went right where my question was: digital versus print, because everybody wants to do just digital because they think it's easy and they think it's sexier in that. But Justin said, and I've found direct mail still outperforms it. On a higher result basis, on a lower send basis, if that makes sense. So
yeah, look, it could be more expensive, right, Ron? Like actual physical thing, and you have to pay someone to deliver it. So it's often not the cheapest media. It's slower often for response. You know, we can have a digital ad up before we're done with this podcast. As soon as I can get something in someone's hands, it'd be a day or two. So it does have a lot of cons for sure, but it's kind of outweighed with response. You know, people look at it. They actually look at it. I guess I should stop there. This is important. They actually look at it.
We actually have it in hand, as opposed to the email that you've got 500 of them today that you got to sift through, which takes time. Our friend Pete Lillo, I love his comments. I mean, and this will be a little crude, so I'm gonna have to apologize to everybody in advance. But you know, Pete's a printer, as Justin is, and Pete's attitude is that, like, you know, people say, "Oh, I don't have time to read all that." Well, you got time to sit on your computer and read it. He says, "This can go with you in the bathroom, and you can read this in the bathroom." You know, as I said, it was going to be crude, but you know, there's truth in that. You know, there's
I won't give the follow-up comment about the digital equivalent there, but look, like people delete the email. People certainly filter their mail and throw away the mail too, right? And that's okay. You have to be okay with that.
yeah,
You know, the majority is still going in the garbage or the recycle bin, and that's totally fine. Um, Even then, though, you got more attention and impact than you would have in an email.
yeah,
Which, by the way, I'm not anti-email. I think they both need to exist and work together. Um, so you get more time. You also get more trust. So there's something about that tangible experience where I think subconsciously the recipient knows someone spent money on it is what it is. So you're perceived, right or wrong, as being more legitimate in this media than in other media. Much like television to an extent. Like if you have a television commercial, people assume your business is stable enough. You know, they may or may not respond to the commercial, but they assume you're a stable business with some pockets.
yeah, yeah.
So we're kind of in the middle as far as that spectrum goes.
So let's dive into it. You know, everybody wants to know, what should I do? You know, aside from the logistics and the mechanics of the printing side of that, what are you finding is working well or best for businesses that you're working with? And what's the thing that you're wanting to direct people to do more of?
Yeah, look, I wish everyone came in and asked that question because they come in with ideas. So we'll quickly go through the one that's hard to make work first, which is what everyone wants. And it's they want to send out a letter or a postcard and just get an instant sale.
Yeah.
Or they want to send out a discount coupon and immediately drive a sale, which can work. It's the hardest thing in my world to make work, though.
Yeah.
So if they want to play that game after I've advised them on the piece I'm going to tell you in a minute, that's fine. But they have to understand that they got to have a gambling budget. You know, there's high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
So I try and push them a little back to tried and true. And the first thing I want to do is go to people that already know me because the hurdle is already gone. Like the relationship's been established. We know it takes like 30 times more effort and money to gather a new customer than to re-excite an old one or retain them, whatever, depends what service you're providing, right?
Yeah.
So the best piece I know to do that is a print client newsletter, which is exactly what you held up. You held up one of my copies of the Profit 911 newsletter. It ain't like fancy, it ain't sexy, but it works. And it amazes me that it works. So, you know, we put tracking phone numbers on and recorded phone calls for various businesses, some being medical, which it amazed me how many people called off the phone number on the newsletter. Like established patients that should know better and should have doc's phone number saved in their cell phone as a contact already called the tracking phone number from the newsletter.
Yeah.
Now, it shouldn't surprise me because I'm in the industry, but it still does. And that's like, this is not like sexy because most people think that they have the referrals and retention covered. They think that they're perfect in that area. And there's always money left to get there. So monthly client newsletter goes without fail every single month. Content wise, the bottom line is it should be fun.
Yeah.
Like 80% fun, 20% like actual real content. It should be personal. So the one you had in front of you, it had, I think, a Sudoku. I think I caught in there. It probably has some jokes. It might have a recipe.
Yeah.
The single most important article in that, however, from a readership perspective, is the very first one that has a picture of me. This is an old one. It looks like I'm snow shoveling. But like the actual article of what's going on in my life, not what's going on down here at Profit 911, not tips on marketing your business like we're giving today. It's like humanizing and making the relationship stick or warm up. It's like real relationship building at scale is what it is.
Right.
And if you're somewhat introverted in social settings, like believe it or not, I am, like small ones like this, I'm great, but put me in a room of 200, I'm not going around shaking hands. This is a way for people to get to know me and feel like they have a relationship with me when in reality they might not.
Yeah. As I liken it to people when I advise them that they should do a newsletter, is that, think about it, it's that ongoing conversation that you're having with your clients that you may have over coffee sitting at Starbucks, you know, and it's a matter of, I know I had gotten comments, and I've done a newsletter, print newsletter for 15 years nonstop every month for 15 solid years. And I will get people who will respond to me by email every month. Hey, I loved your article about, hey, I'm glad to hear about. And I'm like you, is that we're both out there, but I'm not one that's comfortable being out in front of people and being that in the spotlight thing. So it's kind of tough to always talk about yourself and put out there your family and the things that you're doing and that. But it's the conversation. It's the thing that people are interested in. And I think the thing that people forget is this thing's called a newsletter. It should be news, And so, what are you finding as far as we've established print, but what about the digital? I mean, do you see it being used both ways?
Yeah, I mean, you can't just slap the PDF in an email and call it a day. Email is going to be consumed in a different manner, and I think should be provided content-wise in a different manner. Now, I suppose sending the PDF's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing a digital newsletter version, it should have click-throughs to individual articles on a blog, like all the things in digital world you should have for traffic and SEO and retargeting, should already be there. But as far as they don't have to be the same. It has to be congruent. Like you have to be the same person, like offline and online, but not necessarily the same content.
Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody jump in. I'm not sure who that was. Somebody hijacking our podcast.
They got my newsletter. That's what it was.
So, the interesting thing is going back to the digital and print thing, is that I send mine out print primarily, and I send it out digitally. Now, of course, it goes to a lot more people digitally than it does in print because of cost. Now, I have to admit, I'm lazy, and the daggone thing goes out as a link to the PDF because I'm just lazy. However, what I find is every month in the digital distribution of it is that I'm always getting opt-outs every month. I can count on probably 6 or 7 opt-outs every month. On the print side, nobody calls. Rarely does anybody call and say, hey, stop sending me your newsletter. So
yeah, we don't have an offline spam filter. We don't have an offline opt-out. Of course, if they tell you they don't want to, you take them off, save your money. Yeah. But, we don't have all those rules to play by. We don't have the post office doesn't have a spam box on the outside of your house and a regular mailbox. It's all mixed together. I'm sure someday they'll come up with something for that. But it's a level playing field. If you can spend the money to send it, it's level. It's also stable. So one of the things that is very difficult for any digital marketing agency is keeping up with the rules and the changes. And I just had a client text me last week that his 2 Google profiles just got shut down out of the blue. And he's desperate for help and knew that I knew a little about digital, even though I'll claim I don't. But he had no reason why. He had no one he could contact and go to. The mail, they have people to report to. They don't get to be arbitrary in the rules. Now, sometimes they're inconsistent in enforcing them. Yeah. But they don't get to be arbitrary and make stuff up. They do get in trouble for that if it happens. I think maybe we should talk about frequency next, though, because that's probably the next sin and impact point that we see all the time. And without fail, every couple of months, we have this discussion. One of our campaign managers has this discussion with the client, and it's how often to send it, which usually is a budget question, right?
Yeah.
And the recommendation is always monthly. And we will have people change their frequency to bi-monthly or quarterly. And I suppose it may be better than nothing, but the problem is it doesn't achieve the goal. So the goal is to solidify and build the relationship and loyalty. And I try and have people think of their best friend, in real life. And if you only heard from that person every 3 months, is that still your best friend, or maybe is that spot up for grabs? As a vendor, you don't get that loyalty already to that level. So really monthly is what we see succeed. We rarely see someone on a different frequency schedule succeed with it. And if it comes down to budget, we tell them okay, cut your list in a third if you were planning to do quarterly. Send it to a third as many people, but do it monthly.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that that is kind of the minimum, be in someone's personal world with a tangible item, um, time span. And you can mix it up. Like, like once a year we'll send a magazine instead of a newsletter. So you can mix it up occasionally. But I think that consistent pattern of once a month they can feel. Otherwise, it appears just random and scattered, which doesn't help you build that trust.
Yeah. Well, the big question comes down to is the getting it done, which is what you provided done for people. They just provide you with a little bit of stuff, and then you guys take care of it from there. But then it becomes an economics thing. And I know the discussion I hear from people is, well, we sent out 3 or 4, in a row, and we didn't get any money back. We didn't see anything back. And I think that newsletters is one of those things that breaks the direct response rule, which is, it should return at least $1 for every dollar it cost you. I think that the newsletter breaks that rule because it is that relationship tool. It is that long-term strategy. And I'll just give a number, and I have broadcast and shared this in the past, is that one of my clients is the state of Massachusetts. And I do only one thing for the state of Massachusetts. And that one thing happens once a year, off a year, and then once. So it's 2 years in a row, off a year, and then 2 years in a row. And they're a state, they're Commonwealth. So I can't pitch them and sell them on stuff. The only communication I have with them is a newsletter. And it's to the top people that I'm always working with. And I just did some quick math, is they've been a client for 37 years. And my investment to send to them for 37 years has been $8,325. That's what it's cost me just to send to them every month. How many ever months that is? The return, though, just by staying connected with them, has been over $625,000. And it's not because they call me and say, hey, I want to buy that thing. It's because, especially in that year off, it's a 2-year span. 2 years from now, they're going to forget about me. And I just stay in touch. Another aspect was, just this past summer, I had a client who reactivated after 2 years. The only thing they've gotten from me is a newsletter. Opportunity came. And it's sad to say, and if you agree with it, I say that really marketing and sales is not so much about being the best person and having the best product and so on and so forth. It's really being the right person in the right place at the right time with the right people. And the newsletter does that constantly for you month after month. So
yeah, I mean, a couple of complimentary points to that is, one's unsubscribe. So when someone unsubscribes from email, they don't get taken off the print list. So that may be your only contact at that point. Second is, my first business before we were a provider of this service, was in wedding entertainment, which for most people is a once in a lifetime purchase. So the question becomes, okay, after the wedding, how long do they stay on the newsletter list? The answer is forever, or until they get divorced and don't want reminded of their first wedding.
mm-hmm.
But the math worked out, even in that business, which we were a high-end provider, but it wasn't crazy money. The math in that business was, if they provide us one referral every 40 years, the newsletter was profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I would think, one of the worst financial scenarios to use a newsletter, and still extremely profitable. And it's usually buried, right? Like, if we're talking about retention and referral, it is hard to track from like a hardcore direct response metric, which does drive me a little nuts. I have the direct response marketer in me. And that's why we do the call recordings and stuff. So we have a little qualitative data on that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say, okay, that patient would have left on average after a year, and now it's 18 months. And what do we attribute that to? That is a hard argument to make, but it certainly does exist. And you have to look at, are people discussing what you talked about in the newsletter? You got to look for the clues, right? And put them together.
Yeah. And if you're having, like you said, you've got professional services. If they have patients, members, constituents, whatever, that are coming in, like dentists, for example, every 6 months, if they're coming in and they're knowing something about you and they're knowing something about your family and so on and so forth, then that's your tracking. I mean, it's having impact on a level like you said, the postcard and the direct sales letter isn't having, because it's about relationship.
Yeah, the other thing you mentioned was timing, which you are absolutely right that sometimes as a marketer, we can't cause someone to consume when we want them to consume our service. So, example, we do a lot of work in the tax resolution space with a mutual friend of ours. And those are people if you have an IRS problem, the IRS is on your butt to collect money. These are the guys that help you minimize that, right? So they generate a lead, one method or another, and the lead doesn't take action. The newsletter is the perfect tool to stay in front of that lead and warm up that lead. And I like to tell them, it's like, okay, they didn't get in trouble with the IRS overnight. Just because we found out they exist now and they have a problem doesn't mean they're ready to do something about it. So we spent the money to get the lead. Now we have to stay in front of them until something in their life, outside of our control, something in their life changes to where now it's the time to take care of this problem. And now suddenly we're the only person there because we're the only one that bothered to follow up that long. And
Sure.
a newsletter is a very passive way to follow up. So honestly, it's the lazy way to follow up. But after we do the same thing here. If you come to an event and my staff get your contact info and you requested some pricing or something, you get the pricing. You may have had a consult if you ask for one. You're going to get some email follow-up out the gate. And then at the point we decide that human labor is not affordable to follow up with you anymore, you're going to keep getting, the emails tell you unsubscribe, and you're going to get the print newsletter, and that's it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes a year or two later, the relationship warms back up and becomes, a client that's going to last for years for us.
Yeah. And I agree with what you said is that who goes on the newsletter list? It's everybody.
Everyone that knows who you are.
Yeah.
So I would never send the newsletter out to people that don't know me yet, unless they're extremely targeted and you send a letter with it. But it's someone you have some sort of existing relationship with.
Yeah. Well, I've taken it a step further, and the newsletter has actually replaced business cards for me. So I don't have business cards. And what I do with the newsletter is, in a first time meeting, people always say, do you have a business card? And what does a business card contain and why people are asking for it? It has your name. It has oftentimes your address, your telephone number, and your email address. All right. And that's what they want. But when you give a business card, what happens to that business card? It gets put in their pocket. It gets lost. It gets thrown in the garbage. They asked you for it because they just wanted to stop talking to you, and they figured that was the way. Okay, it's being at the network meeting, and you're like, that's your measure of, I had success. I passed out 30 business cards. I've replaced the business card with a newsletter. When somebody asks me, and it's first a pattern interrupt, they'll say, do you have a business card? And I say, no, I don't. And they look at me like, you don't have a business card? You're in business? And I say, well, what I do have is, if you give me your business card, I'm going to send you I'm going to enroll you in a subscription of my newsletter, which is going to come to you each month in print. And it has on it what you want in my business card: my name, my address, my telephone number, and my email address. But what it's also going to do is it's also going to inform you about who I am and what I do. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Well, guess what? Now I'm getting their card, and it's a lead generation, and they go on the list, and then I throw their card away. But I haven't given out a card. And like we said already, they're not calling and saying, hey, stop sending me your newsletter.
Yeah. I mean, every once in a while you get a crazy one, but they're the exception, and they're worth talking about then.
Yeah. Well, the ones I love that I have gotten is that, like, if I send, and I do a lot of work like you in the dental world, is if I'm sending to a dental practice that I've had some kind of relationship or connection with, and that dental practice gets sold, and the new owner, and they call and say, hey, stop sending us your newsletter. And I'm thinking, duh, you missed the whole point, and I'm going to take you off the list anyhow because you're not right for me because you didn't get it.
Yeah. So, and you didn't have a relationship with them, right? And that's why they want it off. So
yeah. Very quickly, and just keeping an eye on the clock, what about like yours? Like you said, you're changing from Profit 911 to Jurassic Marketing, and that you talked about the balance of news, information, fun versus content. What about, like, yours is themed? I mean, what do you tell people about, what should it be? And I see people wanting, here's my question is, they make up a newsletter and they try to do it on their own, and it looks different, and it's always different every month. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's not really building consistency, which is the point. What it looks like, it has to be on brand with whatever you have out there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned dentists, so they have physical practice, right? So physical building, what's it look and feel like? They might need outside eyeballs to figure that out, but anything they've put in there, email, website, etc. Yeah, building picture work great. It just has to be consistent with their other marketing. It shouldn't feel disjointed. Um, they can decide the line between personal, professional. Usually they err too far on the side of professional, but that's fine. We want them to be comfortable with what they send. But the bottom line is it just has to be congruent with what they're putting out there. And branding should be intentional. Um, again, you and I come from a similar direct response background where branding didn't account for much.
Yeah.
But certainly it has its place, and you can cause some damage if you have conflicting imagery and messaging. So, yeah, it does need to be consistent. Now, you might have an occasional holiday issue or something, but God, I wouldn't be changing up the look and feel every month. Christmas, maybe the letters have snow caps on them or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and Jurassic Marketing, by the way, was kind of accidental for us. We had a pretty corporate brand in Profit 911. The Jurassic Marketing one is a lot more fun and whimsical, and it's taught me a lot about the value of a powerful brand. Like, it has a life of its own. So
Yeah.
don't miss out on the opportunity if you're able to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have time here, but I just got a box from you that has, a bunch of like fun Jurassic tchotchkes in it. And, so it lends itself to a lot more things. And you stand out. I mean, when it shows up every month, you immediately identify, oh, this is from Justin. I'm going to take a look at that, or somebody else. It's again, that relationship and that communication.
The problem is then everyone knows your brand, and now they assume I love dinosaurs. And it was just my birthday earlier this week, and even my family gave me a dinosaur card. And are you sharing the video of this or just the audio, Ron?
Both.
Okay, so for the viewers, this was my gift from the staff here. It's a bobblehead me riding a dinosaur. So you gotta be careful what you put out there. You can't get away from the brand eventually, but
Yeah. And I would imagine there's probably like scared shitless of dinosaurs from, your childhood or something. That would be appropriate. Anything I haven't asked that I should have asked that you think is important regarding newsletters that people know?
If you are in a situation where it's troublesome and you're trying to survive and secure, okay? So, we like talking about when business is going well, how we add more business. But thinking back to when COVID first hit, as much as I hate to, but thinking back there, the first thing we did was double down on people that already knew us. And, of course, we sent our newsletters and everything else, but everyone kind of looked inward because when the rubber met the road, all of a sudden, they're scared of losing what they had, and it became important all of a sudden. So I would urge people to, well, if you're in that situation, you need to look inward, and this is probably the cheapest tool to keep marketing rolling. But I would encourage you to think of that before it's a problem and use it positively. So this is like the cheapest way to hold on to people that you've already invested in.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people want to know more, because I know that there's people watching and listening to this that are saying, I've done a newsletter in the past, it didn't work, and yada, 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 and so forth. Now we've reinvigorated, hopefully, their interest in it. What do they do? How do they, because you do everything for them. How do they find out more about the newsletter at Jurassic Marketing? And how do they get in touch with you? Who do they get in touch with? How do they get that ball rolling to say, I want to start the conversation again?
Well, you can certainly get on our list just by coming in our world and filling out anything. You have a couple of paths. So you can choose whether you're a DIY type person or I want stuff done for me. So if you're a DIY type person, we have a brand and a website called No Hassle Newsletters. So nohasslenewsletters.com. Very cheap. You can buy templates every month, put your stuff in, and you can print it yourself if you want. We can print it. Doesn't matter. That's the cheapest way if you're just kind of dipping your toes, although I would encourage you to commit to doing this if you're doing it. But that would be a way to get started. if you have questions, you want a human being to work with you, you want a more hands-on professional experience, you can go to the profit911.biz or jurassicmarketing.com. If you want to see a little more about the dinosaurs, there's a great video there too on jurassicmarketing.com. But that's our more traditional path, and you can get a price quote up there, or you can get a sample, or you can get on our list and start getting our Jurassic Journal for free.
Yeah. Well, good. And I don't know if the video you're referencing, if there is a video that you've done, which is a tour of your facility, yes, which is that it? Okay. I highly encourage everybody to go there, because aside from everything we've talked about, there's a lot of valuable stuff to learn and see about how to give a tour properly, in order to make impact and connect with people. So, Justin, thank you very much. We don't have a lot of time, but I like to keep this brief. Thank you again for taking the time out. I see that from your walking back, you're at a standing desk. I'm at a sitting desk because I'm lazier than you are.
You might be sitting in your desk more than I'm standing at mine, though. So
yeah, that's true. So, but thank you everybody for coming. My name is Ron Sheets. This has been the One Thing Business Podcast. As I always say, you can't pick up everything by watching or listening to the podcast once. You need to go back through it again with a paper and pencil and start to take down notes. I highly encourage you. I had a text with someone yesterday who said, "Who do I contact about newsletters?" And I said, "Get in touch with Justin." And that is absolutely 100% true, because I'm sending all of my clients that way that I can. I know that Justin will say, stop sending them, because not everybody's always following through. But you've got to take action and implement. That's the only way that you make any success. So I'll shut up now. We'll end this podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm sure you got a lot from this episode. Join Ron and his next guest here on the One Thing Podcast.